topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Churchill said, "Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it." Kevin Hallinan believes that certainly applies to business. Welcome to Winning Business Radio, here at W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. And now, your host, Kevin Hallinan.
Thank you all for joining in again today. I'm Kevin Hallinan, and welcome back to Winning Business TV and Radio on W4CY.com. We are streaming live on Talk4TV.com. That's the number 4. And of course, we're on Facebook Live at Winning Business Radio, as well as we're available after the show in podcast form on whatever platform you like. And that's YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, again, wherever, probably 100 or so outlets, wherever you like to listen to your favorite podcasts. The mission of Winning Business Radio and TV, as regular viewers and listeners know, is to offer insights and advice to help people avoid the mistakes of others, to learn best practices, the how-tos, the what-tos, the what-not-tos, to be challenged and I hope to be inspired by the successes of others. Who are those others? They're consultants, coaches, advisors, authors, founders and owners, entrepreneurs, people with expertise. But, virtually every successful person I've ever had a chance to talk to has had some form of failure in their lives and careers. So while we all have to get our knees skinned once in a while, I'm driven to keep those scrapes from needing major surgery. Let's endeavor to learn from history so we don't repeat it. I've spent the better part of my career equipping businesses to grow, and that's from solopreneurs to small and medium-sized companies, all the way up to the Fortune 50. I've seen some of those companies win, and to varying degrees, I've seen some of them fail. I've had the opportunity to rub elbows with some of the highest performing people around and with some who probably should have found other professions. In my own businesses, I've had lots of success, but some failures too. And I like to think I've learned a lot from those experiences. So yeah, you'll hear a little bit from me, but mostly you're going to hear from guests. And today is no exception. My guest today is Mike Dwyer. He's the founder of Emplana Career. Here's his bio. About 10 years ago, a friend asked Mike to look at their resume, and somehow that became an occasion to do more than the usual supportive critique and morphed into a conversation along the lines of, would it make sense for you to look at this or even that direction? And that deepened Mike's interest in workplace issues, how people navigate their careers, and a personal challenge on how he might continuously prepare to help people with their careers. Many recent grads, as long-suffering seasoned professionals, are looking for meaningful work, something that makes them feel part of something larger. What do they want to spend the majority of their waking time doing? After a long career in both the private and public sectors, consulting stints with Ernst & Young and Deloitte Consulting, and a master's degree in management from Salve Regina University, Mike and a select group of advisors developed Emplana, the career pathway. They help sort through the noise, choosing a more meaningful contribution to the workplace or society. Mike helps seniors look at how they like to spend their time, the soft and hard skills needed to take the next step, identifying network and educational opportunities, and more. Based at Cambridge Innovation Center in Boston, they primarily help people discover their next chapter. Mike and team work with white-collar professionals, especially in tech, financial services and accounting, law, risk, and professional services. In the last few years, a strong element of fighting back has emerged. Globalization, outsourcing, technology, and disruptive competitors have shifted job security from the expectation of the organization to a responsibility of the individual. Mike grew up in triple deckers in Somerville. I'm curious about that. He attended 2 crucial and formative summer programs growing up, Boys State, which was at UMass Amherst and led to attending university there, and during the summer before his senior year in high school at Phillips Exeter Academy, for which he said he was in no way prepared. As mentioned, Mike attended UMass Amherst and stayed to work for the university at Whitmore Hall, management services, and that's systems administration. He lived in Sunderland and Deerfield, Mass., later coming back to the Boston area, during which time he worked in the Route 128 tech belt, but also in downtown Boston. He and his wife, Kathy, have been married for decades and have a 36-year-old son, Connor, who's a carpenter, and 31-year-old adopted daughter, Annie. She's an ICU nurse at Mass General. Mike and Kathy's joy is their kids and their spouse partner with whom they often vacation. They currently reside in Hingham, and he feels fortunate that he's able to take the commuter boat to Boston, which is, one, less stressful than driving or taking the T, and two, gives him a chance to get a jump on the day. They have two sibling shelter cats, Quinn and Leo. Mike, welcome to Winning Business TV and Radio. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kevin, and thanks for such a great intro. I'll try and live up to it.
Of course. I know that it's so common that people say that. I've said it myself. So first, tell us a bit about Kathy.
Oh, I met her. It sounds glamorous, but you have to look beyond it. I met her at Waterville ski area on New Year's weekend. So that sounds like, okay, ski getaway. These guys are big time, right? Not at all.
Yeah.
It was 25 below zero. We were in snorkel parkers, and I just said, you're a single on a double chairlift. Could I join you? And that started a conversation. Her secretary at the time almost ended us. I tried calling a couple times.
No kidding.
Secretary screened. And on my third and final try, I got through. And the rest is history. And she has a master's in human development, has just retired recently from being a special ed coordinator, which I think is a sainthood job, right? I mean,
for sure. Yes.
And so I'm lucky enough, she's still a little bit active. She's doing some adult literacy work and like that. So that's Kathy.
Love it. And tell us about your kids.
Well, they're so successful, and we're lucky because, you have your ups and downs in reality and family. Like you said, we had some dark days, some uncertain ones. My son dropped out of a few colleges, but just to shut up his father, he's now running a 6-person carpentry business with high-end rendering, CAD CAM. In other words, exactly what he would have done if he'd gone through the honors program in any of those colleges. Daughter's an ICU nurse at Mass Gen. And the reason it's so important to me to talk about adoption, I actually asked my daughter for permission to say something at a church service one time, because it's extraordinary that when you carry a baby for a weekend, we got Annie at 5 months. You can't remember when you didn't have her. And I can put my hand on my heart and say I have a biological and an adopted. There is no difference.
I'm sure.
They're
That's
exactly the same. So we're lucky. We're tight. We do things together. They crack me up. They know how to make fun of me better than anything on planet Earth. And so we have a good time.
I can agree with that sentiment too. So Somerville, my connection to Somerville is that my dad had a business for years on McGrath Highway.
Oh, yeah.
And so I knew the area pretty well. And that was in the, 60s, 70s, a little bit into the 80s. So I know Somerville fairly well. Tell the folks, though, what it was like to grow up in Somerville, and in particular in multiple, sounded like triple deckers. Yeah,
I mean, we were poor. We didn't get a car till I was 10 years old. And at the time, in the 60s, what you saw were, this dad was coming home from John Hancock with the Boston Globe folded up under his arm. And the other dad was coming back from the Charlestown Navy Yard, and so on. But as the suburban flight and the tax base dropped, things got a little shaky. So I remember being a freshman at UMass Amherst and bringing a couple of, it was West Roxbury was Tony to me, and bringing a couple of West Roxbury friends back. And this little black and white TV in the kitchen is saying, somehow the news breaks in and says, most automobiles stolen in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Somerville. I'm saying, okay, that's over. Thank goodness. Then it says most stolen cars recovered in the Commonwealth, Somerville. And so that's what it was like. I think 11% of our high school class went to college. So it wasn't like what my kids grow up in Hingham, where they list every single kid, and there's 6 kids who are taking a gap year, and one of them's going to be a musician or something. You know what I mean? But it was quite different than that. And mind you, though, the whole time, they were always good, hardworking people,
Oh yeah.
like you
Oh yeah.
described the business on McGrath Highway, right?
For sure. For sure. Who and which that business hired a lot of local people. So, that's how I got to know 'em. So what were your early interests?
Well, it certainly wasn't being a student. I learned how to work before I learned how to do anything useful academically. And
Really
so,
good though.
well, that'll never, you'll never go wrong, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
so, you mentioned that, well, let's step back a little bit. So I was an okay student in high school, but by the summer after senior year, I was working 3 jobs to save money for college. Not that I did particularly well when I first got there or knew how to manage money, but I certainly worked hard.
yeah.
But I think a lot of us have our formative years, our biography, create motivations and imperatives in our lives. And I mentioned that experience of being at Phillips Exeter. I was so out of my league. I mean,
Mm,
this guy's dad was head of surgery at
yep.
Chicago. This
Yep.
one, um, but it made. I guess what I'd say is over the decades that was the first impetus to figure out the mainstream, and later I wanted to share it. And so
That's
while I wouldn't pretend to know anything about race or gender,
mm,
I can say to almost anybody, let me show you how to do this. Come on now. You
mm,
you could be
mm.
an AVP, you can get going. Be authentic, you can be yourself, but here's some of the things you can do to fit into mainstream work. Make sense?
It does, it does. So you spent time in the software and business services space, and particularly payroll. Tell us a little bit about those early, positions, kinda what you learned along the way.
Well, there's another thing. People always misunderstand the sentence I'm about to say, and
Mm,
then the second sentence rescues it. So bear with me.
okay.
Um, I have I got 700 college boards. So people always say this guy thinks he's bragging. No, twice in my life, for 6 or 7 years, I worked where everyone else had 800 college boards. And
Uh-huh. Yeah,
that, so
yeah.
first a software house and then later in Bermuda, the reinsurance company. So what does that do to you? Well, I just expressed kind of a motive or a dynamic that says, I want to share the mainstream. The second one is if everyone around is smarter than you have to figure out how to be useful.
Mm,
And that's not a bad thing.
mm.
I had to try harder, pay more attention, and in both things, I eventually I got my feet under me. Um, I hope you're seeing that created a couple of dynamics that are lifelong and that I want to share with people.
That's excellent. Now, you mentioned Bermuda, and I saw that in your press kit. Ernst& and Young took you to Bermuda. It must have been terrible.
Well, it was the wife was there with 2 kids, and I was platinum on one airline and silver on
Yeah.
another. Not
Yeah, okay,
initially. Ernst and
okay.
Young, I was just busy,
Yeah,
but it was nice. I mean, it
yeah.
was a great place. The kids went to Montessori school.
Nice.
Um, it's there. I wouldn't pretend there aren't racial tensions, but there are also a lot of neighborhoods that have been intermixed for centuries.
Mm.
You'll hear if you see a Trimmingham, that's a white person. If it's an Outerbridge, that's a black person. But I once heard somebody talk about a neighborhood and say, "Is that the white Coopers or the black Coopers?" And there's no edge to that. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
And there was by the time we got there, and I visited the Bank of Bermuda and did some software training and stuff in
Mhm.
the '80s, and by the '80s and into '90s, the tourist industry was no longer the main contributor to hard currency and business. It started to be catastrophe insurance, reinsurance, all these specialized risk management programs with lots of zeros after them. Nothing that a homeowner or a consumer would ever see.
Uh, After that experience, you were part of a very large company, a division, a VP of MIS, Management Information Services, I think, right? As part
Yes,
of
yes, sir.
Zurich. Yep,
That's
I
right.
remember we've had policies at Zurich, but, tell us about that role, the company, just a little bit, and the role and what you learned.
Well, you know what I think? I think everyone ought to have one mega job where you get to find out who you are. That
Yeah.
there's so much responsibility and
Mm.
so much money and so much speed that you just got to swing the bat. You know what I mean? And I remember when I first got that VP job, I asked my boss if I could buy 6 PCs, And he literally sent a consultant to tell me, Mike, you're the vice president of MIS. You can buy whatever the hell you think you need. That's the point, you know? But having global experience, I mean, I'd wake up in the morning. I've always been a hard worker. I'd get to work at 6:30, 20 minutes to 7, check on Zurich because it's almost lunchtime there, then move to London and Dublin, then go local. And by then, the New York guys are coming in from their long commutes. And to many of your listeners, if they've had international experience, that kind of thing gets ingrained in you. And I think, too, finding out, I always thought I was a technocrat, but it turns out that when we went through a big merger and lots of challenges and stuff, I actually cared about people a whole lot. And we hardly lost anyone in a big merger that got demerged 15 months later that cost $100 million to the two balance sheets. Yeah. And at that level, with that kind of money, it's just a blip in the radar. Yeah. Okay. We backed out. No big deal. Holy smokes. You know, but scale. I remember once getting to a meeting that was above my level. I was a VP, and this is a bunch of CEOs and a couple of board members. And we're going to go do about risk management and disaster recovery and stuff. They draw a quadrant on a whiteboard, and one top corner is exhaust the capital of the Zurich group. Okay. And then the next quadrant is exhaust the capital of an operating unit. And I look at this little list I have in my vest pocket. I don't have anything. There's nothing I could do that would touch that. So what the takeaways were, you know, being able to make financial decisions quickly. In fact, what I'll say to you is I can make a technology and show people how to make decisions quickly. The thing you spend time on is people. Be careful who and how you promote. Try the role first. But it was a wonderful experience that, you know, just was a lifelong learning.
All right, let's take our first commercial break right there. We'll be right back with Mike Dwyer in about 1 minute.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Bestien Wealth Management is family-owned for 2 generations. They take pride in thoughtful financial planning and wealth management with a family feel for your closely held family business. Bestien Wealth Management focuses on deep planning, integrating your business planning with personal. They will help put your money to work and your mind at ease. Go to bestienwealthmanagement.com for more information. Advisory services offered through Commonwealth Financial Network, a registered investment advisor. Join the Bestien family and let our family advise your family. That's bestienwealthmanagement.com for your complimentary initial consultation.
Have you ever dreamt of being on the radio? Well, now is your chance. Be a radio show guest on the #1 ranked internet radio station and promote you and your business for free. Yes, you heard it, free. Business advertising right here on W4CY.com. Call 561-506-4031 now to get booked on one of our shows. That's 561-506-4031. Get your free advertising now.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
We are back with Mike Dwyer. And Mike, I realize I may not be saying the name correctly. Emplana Career?
That's perfect.
Okay. Well, we have timeshare at Vistana, and some people call it Vistana. I've always called it Vistana. And I failed to do one more thing. In the chat, you'll see on the right of the screen, either Studio Chat or Studio One, put your website and email address while we're chatting. And so Juan can put it in the crawl. So my next question while you're doing that, maybe you can multitask a little bit, is you were at Greystone for a year, then back to Bermuda with the secondary insurance or reinsurance, and then another consulting stint with Deloitte for 3.5 years, IT strategy and management. Then the quarter consulting, so more consulting. Then you founded in 2009, it looks like, PSP Services, which you own and operate. Tell us about that business before we get into Emplana Career.
Sure. Thank you. Kevin, that's the day job. And
Yeah.
the thing that's nice about that is it's a wonderful niche. You got to pay some dues, but once you get so you understand the public pension rules and regs,
Hmm.
in fact, you mentioned the graduate program before. I hope everyone gets as much out of their graduate program as I did. I spent 5 years basically saying, oh, that's what that is. Because I was a 15, 18-year techie. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden, I'm doing accounting, economics, contract law,
Yeah.
organizational behavior. It was just drinking it all in. Um, so I think what happens is by adding the different kind of dynamics of the demands of these different jobs, tech, that Greystone, for instance, we were building your $250,000 to $1 million+ websites and fast. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It was go. You add at the same time going to school and all, so all those things together create some confidence and and some experience. Like I'm sure many of your listeners spend time coaching or mentoring others and sharing their experience, and that's certain. So the pension job, you get to a point where you finally know. I'm not going to try and pretend to be an actuary or an attorney or an underwriter or an accountant, but I
Hmm.
got a pretty good feel for what they need in public pension at this point. One of the things I'll tell people that's really interesting when you think about networking, most people don't think of volunteering as a type of networking.
Oh, that's good. Yep.
But actually, I go to my town of Hingham town meeting for about 20 years.
Hmm.
And finally, about the 20th time, they said you should fill in a talent blank and do some volunteering. I was guilted into doing so. And somehow I became chair of the audit committee. And while I was doing good, we were doing good things. We ran an RFP for a new audit firm,
Hmm.
nice business, good thing. But what's really interesting is I started to receive the accounting and actuarial reports that I hitherto had been party to preparing.
Mm-hmm. That's
And so,
interesting. Wow.
isn't it just, you raise your hand, you get out there and get on the playing field, and look what can happen. And it was just wonderful because just such a nice, different seat at the table, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So, the pension business is, after coming out of software, private practice, global reinsurance, where going like 100 miles an hour, stuff is often stately as far as the pace goes in public sector pension.
Hmm.
And yet, um, there's a lot of money on the table. Um, I'm not an investment manager of any kind, but we certainly all pay attention to our unfunded liability, which you want. Certainly, I'm lucky enough that the boards I work on are coming up to full funding, which is delightful. I mean, I don't know how many, if you're familiar with Chicago and Illinois, for instance, where the actuarial
Heard
doom
about it.
is
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
within sight. You know what I mean? Chicago is 28% funded, and recently approached Illinois at 32% and said, "Would you like to join forces?" And Illinois said, "No, thank you." That's a tough place to be. So what happens is, I've been over the years and now decade and a half able to find some pretty trusted clients that trust me and I can do some good work. I've brought on an intern or two a couple of times,
Hmm.
but it's a really solid platform where you're out there doing things and you're in the mix of all kinds of cloud computing, cybersecurity, um, and that, of course, I mean the whole everybody does their thing differently. To me, I wouldn't want to be just a career coach.
Hmm.
Um, to me, I mean, I have to work too hard, to be honest with you, but it seems to be how I'm wired. The fact that there's a day job where there's deadlines, RFPs, helping clients, software selections, projects, you
Hmm.
calculations, just work. I mean, a lot of times it's funny. I get to do some little higher end stuff occasionally, often enough present to boards, but I also get to do a spreadsheet with 8 tabs because no one else wants to do anything like that. So it's a really good mix, good for the skills, and a great platform that means I can be doing the Emplana career business without having to, take out a mortgage or do anything drastic.
All right. So this question applies to both PSP and Emplana. Why did you decide to start your own companies? What was behind that?
Well, I liked working for Deloitte and everything,
Mhm.
but I remember wanting to be on the next pension project, and the only way I could make sure I didn't get snapped up into something, I was in a nice group in Deloitte, IT strategy and management. There's only like
Mhm.
110 of us practitioners, so you'd get snapped up, and it might be something high end, and it might be kind of a work for food project. So the only way I could keep myself free was to volunteer for proposals, which are pretty intense, as you may realize,
For sure.
at these big companies. And after a while, I just had enough relationships, and I wanted to just go out on my own. And I've had a few chapters throughout
Yeah.
my career where I just
Mhm.
was a billable, opened up my own. You can't say hang out your own shingle. Nobody knows what that means
I
anymore.
know. I know.
Um, but go out and I've done that a few times. And then on the career business, you know what? If I never make a nickel from it, I've made some money, but it's not about money. I think at some point I'll start having a little bit more as I shift from the retirement work, 100%, and then
Mhm.
doing this extra. I'm sure there'll be some billings and there's some good things to do, but it's really just what I should be doing. Um, and what do you do when you come out of Ernst and Young and Deloitte? You build frameworks. You've got
Mm,
assessment tools. You
that's
know how to
right.
do this
That's
kind of
right.
stuff, right?
Systems and processes, right?
That's exactly right, sir.
So you own and operate Emplana, where your purpose, I love this, is to is to improve career prospects for your clients through career guidance. And I read that you're committed to helping people navigate, I'll read this, downsizing, outsourcing, ageism, either too young or too old, and anything else that interferes with a productive place in the labor market. So I want to know how you saw that need and tell us more about the work that you do.
Thank you. I tell you, if I have any depth, it's here because to me, I want taxpayers and homeowners. I want that. That
Yeah.
strengthens our
Yeah.
society.
Yeah.
And if you go back to those other things I mentioned, kind of the confidence that I can help provide some access to
Hmm.
mainstream, having had to work with all those smarter than me people. Um, so I really love to jump in it. And it's funny, the last, say, 5 years, I've been working with well, I don't know if I should mention it, just a local university career office. And
Hmm.
I hired a few grad students for a project I was doing. And that got me on the list of job shadowing. And then that led to mentoring and this and that.
Yeah.
So that thing has
Yeah.
been going for years. And, Steve Dubin, PR Works, such a
Hmm.
good firm. We've lately been working, the other kind of barbell is seniors, because what you want to do for these grad students in this really challenging job market is you want to just brainstorm every avenue that we can think of. For the seniors, it's a little bit of a different game. You want to
Mm.
prep them for returning to work. No, no. Your boss isn't going to come and tap you on the shoulder. There's this thing called Slack. You know what I mean? You can
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of introduce them to how collaborative tools work
Hmm.
these
Hmm.
days. But the other thing that's really interesting with the seniors is harvesting their past in an effective way.
Hmm.
And that is a joy. That is brainstorming work that I just can't get enough of. So what we're doing there is we're
Yeah. Some
looking
of these folks have such rich backgrounds.
oh, Kevin, I mean, and you know what? Another thing you got to get with the seniors is um, coming up, we all thought of work as a job.
Hmm.
That may not even be the operative model anymore. There's
Hmm.
outsourcing. I drag seniors in any kind of seminar. I call up Fiverr and scroll through 750 service categories.
Wow.
And then what I say to them is, remember what I said, to look through what you did, and not just the job description, but informal roles, meeting facilitation, coaching, whatever it might have been. And it's a really nice dynamic, because you have a retrospective dynamic going on where you're harvesting, and you have a prospective dynamic where you're exploring. And they, of course, inform each other.
All right, let's pause right here. We're going to take our second and final break. We'll be back in about 1 minute with Mike Dwyer.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Bestian Wealth Management is family-owned for 2 generations. They take pride in thoughtful financial planning and wealth management with a family feel for your closely held family business. Bestian Wealth Management focuses on deep planning, integrating your business planning with personal. They will help put your money to work and your mind at ease. Go to BestianWealthManagement.com for more information. Advisory services offered through Commonwealth Financial Network, a registered investment advisor. Join the Bestian family and let our family advise your family. That's BestianWealthManagement.com for your complimentary initial consultation.
The YP.com website is your local search engine. If you're looking for a good restaurant, it can help you find the right one nearby with ratings and reviews. Or if your car breaks down, you can use the YP app to find the closest repair shop. Or maybe you're just looking for something to do on a Friday night. Well, it has great local coupons for all sorts of things in your area. No matter what, when, or where, if you're looking for something, YP Local Search can help you find it. So go to YP.com or download the app to search local, find local, and save local.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind: to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
We're back with Mike Dwyer, founder of Emplana Career. Is there a story behind the name Emplana, or meaning?
There is. And remember you said about scraped shins or bruised knees, or whatever the terms you
scraped
use,
knees.
Kevin?
Yeah.
I spent several $1,000s on a domain called CareerWorks. And it turns out in the West Coast, there's a nonprofit funded by a family wealth management that's spelled with a dollar sign. CareerWorks $. So you can do what my lawyer said to me. Don't worry about it. I think, because I was all bent out of shape that I bought a domain, and he told me, "Oh no, Mike, you don't have any problems. I've had people with 50,000 units at Amazon warehouses who find out they have a trademark problem. So you don't have a problem."
Wow.
So
wow.
basically, I don't know. I'm a nerd. So what did I do? Whatever possessed me, Kevin, I saw I can't use CareerWorks. So I bought a Latin English dictionary, and I did all kinds of things. Cogito, I was pulling with this. Then one fine day I went, empowerment, employment, planning, masters in management, Emplana. That's the story.
All right. Yep. And you did that yourself. You didn't pay a big, Madison Avenue firm to come up with that.
Well, you probably can tell, but I'm also lucky to have lots of grad students around me, and I could have farmed that out. But this one felt personal, and so that's where I landed. And it's worked fine now. And the domain was available. It was able to be trademarked, and off to the races we go.
That's great. So what's the size of your team? You have a small, but it looks like a small but mighty team.
Yeah, it's always me. It's my network who'll join for paid and unpaid work, depending what's going on. And then I think I've had maybe 4 interns over the course of several years. So it's kind of adjusts to size and as need. And so I actually am an employer, although I always tick the tiny box, any 0 to 10, that's me.
Yeah. So are you doing recruiting as well as working with outsourced folks?
No, no, not so much of that corporate side, although I think
Okay.
that could,
Okay.
you know, pre-COVID, I was actually
Mm,
approached about that and starting to look
mhm,
into it. But I think right now, um, I've been sharing an article from the Wall Street Journal recently, mass layoffs, the new norm. And second or third
mm,
paragraph said
mm.
that used to be a sign of distress and mismanagement. Now, Oracle lays off 30,000 people and their stock goes up. Um,
Correct.
it's brutal out there. So I'm really
We used to
focusing.
work with them. We did a lot of work with them, in fact, and it would happen fairly regularly. I don't mean every week, but, every
Well,
year, sometimes a couple times.
but I think, and so maybe in the Oracle heritage or
Mm,
biography, trimming and the like is normal. But this time they'll let go 30,000 people, let
mm.
Meta let go
Yeah,
8,000.
yeah.
And what's scaring me is that, well, Kevin, you've been in business a long time. If I listen to all the background you and your team and your businesses have, um, I think AI is making a massive impact to work. But if you've lived through business cycles, you also know we always overcorrect.
Mhm,
And I think
mhm.
that's part of what's going on right now. Yes, there is a true impact of AI, and it will change how we work and how many of us are needed. But I think right now that mass layoff article from the Wall Street Journal that's so scary is you get applauded. It's seen as, racing to the
Right,
fore.
right,
Now,
right.
problem is, there's a great case study taking place right in front of us all around craft foods. I mean, in the business press, they owned mac and cheese, a bunch of other brands.
Yeah.
Life was good. And basically, if I'll take my own understanding and just share it with you, is that they spent 20 years doing cost cutting, got very profitable, but now when it comes time to be nimble and respond to competitors, who's home? You know what I mean?
Mm,
Um,
mm,
you need people, um, who have some vision, who really know, who really internalize, what the mission and the capabilities
mm,
and direction of the company is.
mhm.
Oh, I'm so glad to see you nodding. Thanks.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
and I think when we lay off everybody, we lose that.
Institutional knowledge. And
Absolutely.
it's yeah, listen, you gotta be smart, you gotta be nimble, you gotta be strategic to run a company, don't get me wrong. A lot of respect for C-level and leaders,
Right.
but the people that know the most about how the business actually works are in the middle.
Yeah, and yeah, and
Yeah.
and right, and you whether it's retirement or downsizing, whatever else. So
Mm, mhm.
that's what gets my blood going. I want to fight back. Um, this business of, over and over again, I see entry level. I haven't seen them. Some of the grad students are showing me things that say entry level position, five
Yeah.
years experience. Uh,
Isn't that funny?
yeah, come
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
that's not right.
I saw one that was, I forget the number of years, 5 years experience with AI.
Right. I mean, give me a break. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I am really just working with people. I'll tell you a happy story.
yeah,
I have hired off Upwork. I had one grad student who, if her she could do everything. She was not somebody who could pick. And so her elevator pitch, you would have needed a skyscraper. Okay. And finally I said to
yeah.
her, you got to pick something that you could actually put on Upwork. And of course, just to prove me wrong, she put it on Fiverr. But what she did for a year, in marketing, when they do segmentation and then they develop brand persona, she spent a year doing that as project work off Fiverr. I love that story.
Wow,
That's
wow.
so much better than sitting home or being a barista. You got income, you're doing something real, you're inside companies. And
Mhm.
so, really, those are the kinds of things we're trying to create.
That's another form of networking
Of
to that point,
course.
right, that you made earlier. How do your clients find you, or how do
Well,
you find them?
It happens every day. And remember, I have a day job. So,
Hmm.
most
Hmm.
recently, now that we've been doing a little bit of senior focus, we're lucky enough to have 20 of them in a room at a time. We just did something a
Yeah.
week or two ago at the Duxbury Senior Center, next chapter type thing. We'll be doing that
Oh, yeah.
again in another neighboring town in Cohasset. Um, and I think probably in Plymouth too. And I love those because um, one of the things I like about seniors is a lot of them, the filters are gone. So you get pretty direct feedback,
That's
and I
right.
can work
That's
with
right.
that. We're not wasting any time. But I really love the idea of leading them through. No, no, go harvest what you have. And that
Mm,
dynamic I described to
mm,
you, Kevin, the retrospective dynamic of finding. And one of the here's a great example of a senior, Mike. What if I want to sift for things I like and make me happy? Great question, senior. And what I would say to my answer to the person was, you may be defining whether it's a volunteer or a paid position as you answer that.
mm.
But by all means, answer it. And so, but that's the level of discussion we're having and the like. And I just love that stuff. So it's, I would say lately for the last few months, there's a pretty steady stream of graduate students trying to help them. And
Mhm.
now we're doing these senior seminars where you're getting 20 people at a time. And then there's smatterings of people who just hear about it or stop by or whatever. So it keeps me occupied. The other thing is this is pretty intense work. You know, you mentioned networking and you picked up
Mm,
quickly on a couple of things I said. Geek that I am, I've actually developed like a third of a page of categories of networking. Identity networking. If you are a young black gay accountant in some midwestern city, you might need some navigation help in our society and in
mhm,
business. Um, y you know, if so how much of that you need? Some people need the classics, right? The Rotary Club, the Chamber of Commerce.
mhm,
Some
mhm.
people, I try and get someone who's afraid of something to
Oh,
go
that's
to
good.
all right?
Yeah.
If I get an accountant who gets glassy-eyed when you use the word technology or vice versa, go to a meetup. I
Yeah,
was
there are a
working.
million of those. I know.
Oh my God. I was
Yeah.
working with a CFA. It reminded me a lot of you, Kevin. Very polished, ran a great, conversation. And I mentioned some of this stuff and he had to speak up. He said, we have a CFA meeting, Portland. There's 35 of us. It costs $10 for lunch. And every time someone shows up, we all descend on them like it's fresh meat.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
my buddy Steve Dubin, that
Mhm.
said you should be willing to drive 80 miles for that. And so that's another kind of networking. This kind of, the latest thing, the term I'm using is topical networking. I want to know about CFA. I want to know if it's worth the blood, sweat, and tears or whatever. But certainly anything you're afraid of, try and join a meetup and start listening. And you can go in there. You don't have to go and say, I'm cool, I know all this. Say, hey, I'd love to hear what's going on. Be humble.
And you
And
mentioned
yeah,
volunteering a couple of times. There are volunteer opportunities that, with other professionals, whether it's food bank or I mean, food bank of Greater Boston's big. There's my brother's keeper, which it's on the campus of the Catholic College in Easton. There,
oh,
I'm
it's not
drawing
coming
a
to
blank.
me.
I'm drawing a
That's
blank.
okay. But I know I'm excited about
Yeah,
what you're saying
yeah,
because you
yeah.
never know who's next to
Right,
you.
right.
And
I mean, I
and
I made eye contact when my kids were young, and I became a football coach, Pop Warner football coach, and I was on the board. My wife and I were both on the board for a long time. And I made so many connections. I still know
right.
many of those people, and, I consider many of them friends.
Well, Kevin, thank you. And in this time when I'm reading articles that say mass layoffs and good luck call it. Well, I mean, I have an Economist headline. Okay, new grad, you're screwed. That's
Yeah,
that's in the
yeah,
Economist. I mean, that's a
yeah.
sober periodical. Um, we might have to consider something. I tell people in my seminar if they're willing to think a little out of the box. My wife bought me a drone, and I was really an idiot. I let it sit there for a couple of years, so I got mad at myself. I watched some YouTubes. I flew the
Yep,
drone.
yep.
Next thing you know, one of my friends at church sees pictures of my wife's backyards and the hydrangeas, and she starts saying to me, "Would you take pictures of my next social gathering?" So my wife bought me two
Yeah.
books. One is how to do drone photography, make sure there's a street sign or something that shows scale and stuff. But the second one is businesses with drones. It turns
Mm,
out if you
mm.
want to know if the yellow lines are painted in the parking lot right and you should pay the bill, you don't go out there with a tape measure anymore. And there's just a million things. You hear that. So when you're working with somebody, what you want to do is the sound I'm looking for is, when us humans say, huh, that sound we make when something's that
Yeah.
could actually,
Yeah.
it's intriguing. It might be possible. We want to just work with people until they get that. And part of this, and I'm going to ask you to help me talk about
Sure.
this for a minute.
Sure.
I believe that one of the first things you have to do is put together a personal board.
I like that.
And
Yep. Yep.
I have somebody who's in my circle at my co-working space that I got talking about this after hours, and she's kind of a fiery person. I really like her. She's an activist. And she said that one of your people on your board might not even know what you do for a living, but they know you and they know when you're being timid or when you're being
Mm,
too bold.
mm.
Yes. And I would even go so far. So, I mean, just please react to that. I mean, I
Yeah,
think
I
that,
had an accountability partnership. I mean, I've had several, but the one I'm thinking of is there were 3 of us who did what I do. One was in, South Carolina, the other in Indianapolis, me in Boston, and every Friday for a number of years, we would talk to each other. It was 20 or 30 minutes, and it was basically, "All right, did you do what you said you were gonna do last week? And what are you gonna do next week?" I mean, we had fun. We were close friends. We'd see each other at conferences about 3 times a year, but we'd talk much more regularly, and I made the comment one day, "Guys, I feel like I'm taking more out of this. I feel bad. I feel like I'm taking more out of this than I'm giving." And they both said, "Me too."
ah, I
How cool is
love it.
that? How cool is that?
I love
Yeah.
it. When I think too, the idea of convening them, a lot of times when I read in the business press about a personal board, it sounds like
Mm,
you ask serially. Let me ask Joe. Let me ask Mary Les.
mm, mm.
Well, I'd say buy some coffee and bagels, put them in a room. It's much harder to schedule. It's a huge personal risk, but do it. And the other thing too, I'm big on in any of these networking things, putting your toe in the water.
Yeah.
Whoever you think to ask for your first personal board doesn't have to be the lifelong version, does it?
Oh,
It, c- it-
that's a fact. That's a fact.
so take what you just said, take some of these other things where you could, like the CFA example.
Mm,
There's places and ways that you can get fresh ideas, fresh insights, and I think I do say it's incumbent on all of us. It's no longer a cradle to grave job, is it?
yeah. Oh, no, not far from it. Far from it. I've been with Sandler for 25 years. I tell people that, and they don't believe it because nobody does that anymore. I'm not saying I'm special, please. I'm just saying I was fortunate enough to land in a place that's still fun and, meaningful, and we do a lot of good stuff. And, it's been a good ride, but that's unusual.
That's why you report it, isn't it?
Mm,
It's to make
yes,
the point, right?
right,
Yes.
right. Well, Mike, um, 2 questions left. We're unbelievably out of time. Who in the viewing and listening audiences should reach out to you and why?
Thank you. I'm thinking that about a tenth of the percent of the workforce
Yep,
are really my people,
yep,
and all those wonderful type A's that already are doing networking and everything
yeah,
else.
yeah,
I can help, but you don't need me. And if you're not willing to try and add on some networking, some skills
mm,
development,
mm,
but if you want to get going and you're willing to put a little into it, and you want somebody who's taking this seriously and has some background, and you want some help, that's who we want.
and the best way for them to get in touch with you is at the website, right?
It absolutely is. And what'll happen is there's submit, let us know, and we'll get back to you. It might take a day or two, but anyone who wants to talk, and I'm fine with a 45-minute freebie. A lot of times, um, organizing when people some of these seminars and stuff, people pick up pretty quick. Wait a minute,
Yeah,
I can do
yeah,
this myself.
yeah,
Yes, fine with me. But then again, if you are somebody who would want to do this kind of shared brainstorming, maybe pay for some help,
mhm.
that's great too.
Outstanding. So it's Emplana Career, EMPLANA career.com. And his name is Mike Dwyer. Mike, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Kevin, for sharing your
My pleasure.
audience.
My pleasure.
It's wonderful. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. And thanks everybody for watching and listening. This is a show about business and business challenges. And if you've got concerns about the sales effectiveness of your company, whether your sales team is you or small or very large, feel free to reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn at Winning Business Radio, or drop me a note. One of my many email addresses is kevin@winningbusinessradio.com. Our company is Winning Incorporated. We're part of Sandler Training. We develop salespeople and sales teams into high achievers and sales leaders into true coaches and mentors. Listen, we're not right for everybody, but maybe we should have a conversation. Thank you to our producer and engineer, Juan. Thank you, Juan, for another job well done. Be sure to join us again next week, Monday, May 25th. We'll do it all again. Until then, this is Kevin Hallinan.
You've been listening to Winning Business Radio with your host, Kevin Hallinan. If you missed any part of this episode, the podcast is available on Talk4 Podcasting and iHeartRadio. For more information and questions, go to winningbusinessradio.com or check us out on social media. Tune in again next week and every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time to listen live to Winning Business Radio on W4CY Radio, W4CY.com. Until then, let's succeed where others have failed and win in business with Kevin Hallinan and Winning Business Radio.